Parts of old Kalamata take me to Venice, the narrow, twisting alleys, the yellow walls reflecting the warm glow of the street lamps, the sound of one's feet on the flagstones, and, looking up, stars between the rooftops. C'est beau ici, papa. C'est romantique. Gary's face is lit up, and his voice wistful as he turns to me. I wish Eleni was here with us. You do, Gary? But think, you've been talking of quenching your thirst ever since we arrived, and she wouldn't let you do it. You're right, Pa. We've been doing a round of the cafes and bars with pipe and hat, and now are looking for a congenial taverna to repair to in order to squander our gains. We smell appetizing whiffs of cooking from way up the street, and track them down to a ramshackle tavern with two pipe-like chimneys belching smoke from its tin roof. Peering in through the steamed-up windows, we see a cosy scene inside. A blazing wood stove with people pulled up on chairs around it, a woman cooking, and tables stretching back into the dim interior at which groups of people are eating. This is the place for us. We walk in and take a table close to the stove. One of the most beautiful girls I've ever laid eyes on springs up and comes smiling over to us. Ah, what eyes she has! What wells of hidden depths! What sheer black hair tumbling in sheens to her shoulders! We look at each other straight in the eye, for a time-stopped instant before she breaks off saying, "Tithelete, what do you want?" Naturally, I want to say, "You." But instead I say, "Wine." She spins on her heels, has a word with the woman cooking, who smiles over at us, and returns with a brimming jug of Retsina. "This is a gift from my mother and I. Welcome to our taverna." Gary and I rise to our feet, raise our glasses in salute, and exclaim, "We drink to your mother and you, Olga. We drink to you, Olga." We take up residence on the beach, and every evening we deliver ourselves to what we've come to call Chez Olga, the romantic tavern on Fahren Street. We've become right regulars, and Olga's mother calls us Pediamu, my children, provides us with soup and potatoes every night, and only charges us for the wine we drink, most of which is paid for anyway by customers at the other tables. And so an evening chez Olga costs virtually nothing. In fact, we usually stumble out richer than when we entered, for, with a nod of consent from Olga's mum, I pull my pipe from my pocket, let fly with some wailing air into the steamy interior, whilst Gary jostles round the tables with the hat. After which, Olga asks whether we have enough for breakfast. If, on inspection of the proceeds, we find we're lacking the requisite amount, she drops a coin or two in, saying, "Now you have it." Whenever Olga has some moments to spare, she pulls a chair up to our table. She has a spark in her eye and loves to hear of our drunken escapades in Athens and Halkidda. "It's a good life you two lead," she says. "I'll have to come along with you sometime." "Oh, yes," I say, jumping at such a wild scheme at the thought of being out on the razzle with Olga. I wonder how she'd be out of the watchful eyes of her mother. She's very Greek, the dutiful daughter, but there's this streak in her which could magnificently, sublimely disobey the rules. But it would be difficult, she adds. "She likes you, Papa," Gary says to me. "Do you think so, Gary?" "Oui, Papa." "What makes you think so?" "The way she looks at you." Gary's well versed in the whims and ways of women. He's somewhat of an expert, in fact. So, do you think there's a chance, Gary? Je ne sais pas. You'll have to find out, but I think it'll be not easy from a practical point of view. What do you mean, Gary? What do you mean practical? I want him to enlarge upon what he's said, but he's getting to the point of incoherence. His head's beginning to droop towards the table. Je sais pas. And he's gone. The following day, bloated with luncheon, we're stretched out on the beach. Gary's nodded off, and I've pulled my notebook from my pocket and am doodling. I draw a picture of Gary and myself striding out along the winding road, exaggerating the difference in size between us, so that he hardly reaches higher than my waist. I think it's rather funny. I'll show it to him when he wakes up. I start to practice my hand at writing Greek. Olga, I write. Sagapo, I love you. Είσαι πολύ ωραία. You are very beautiful. Θέλω να κάνω έρωτα με σένα. I want to make love to you, etc. And I decorate the page with hearts. I slip the notebook back in my pocket and fall asleep. This evening at the taverna, I suddenly remember the drawing. Ah, Gary, I forgot to show you this. And I hand him the notebook, open at the sketch. He's delighted at it. Ah, Papa, it's us, he exclaims. He turns the page and sees what I've written about Olga. You're really in love, huh, Papa? He grins, putting the notebook down on the table. In a while, we're joined by both Olga and her mum, who pull chairs up to the table. What's the book? Asks Olga, pointing at the notebook. Well, look, I say, proudly handing it to her, and open it at the sketch. Gary and I on the road. Ha! She exclaims with amusement. Just like you. He is a little bigger than I am, says Gary, charging our glasses, but he's exaggerating there. We drink. Olga, who's been flicking through the pages of the notebook, suddenly has a hand to her mouth and is giggling. We look at her, puzzled. Then Gary lets out a great bellow of laughter as he clicks as to what she's giggling at. And then I click. Yikes! No, Olga, don't read. I shoot out of my seat, red-faced, panic-stricken, to grab the book containing my overt declarations of love. But it's too late. She's read it. Her mum, completely bewildered at all this, is saying, "What's going on? Why are they laughing?" They're mad, I say, whilst thinking I'll never be able to look Olga in the eyes again. Of course, our intake mounts as the evenings go by. The antiquated jukebox in the corner, which had not been working previously, suddenly sparks into life, and we keep it turning with 5 drachma bits. Romantic songs scratch their way through the verses. Capu Nictoni, O Ilios Pagoni. Somewhere night's falling, the sun's turning to ice. Ise Pandromeni, then Perazi. You're married, it doesn't matter. Drunk with ecstasy one evening, I leap to my feet and dance between the tables, whereupon Olga rushes over and takes to the floor with me. We swirl round and leap in the air. Her eyes like fires are in mine. Her hands, like conductors of unseen currents, brush my body, make me spring, intoxicated, with every fibre of my being towards her. We're up there. Then the twangs of the bouzouki fade away. We collapse, laughing, exhausted, in our chairs, under the disapproving gaze of her mum, and to the appraisal of Gary, who says, "Magnifique, Papa, magnifique." Olga goes back to clearing the tables. The taverna's closing up, and Gary and I find ourselves hobbling back to the beach. I'm going to tell her what I think of her, I say to Gary. The way she dances, her eyes, Gary, her everything. She was speaking to me. She wouldn't have danced like that if she didn't like me, would she? No, Papa, I told you she likes you. You don't think then she thinks I'm just a drunkard, an ivrogne? Well, of course she knows that, Papa. But women have an ambiguous attitude towards drunkards. They're either repelled or intrigued at what lies behind a man's drinking. It often dawns on them that they might be the cause, and that rarely intrigues them. It's a bright morning, the memory of last night's like a dream, which won't fade. Gary makes a phone call to his Dulcinea. He comes away from the kiosk looking very glum. Papa, I've got to go back to Athens. It's all over if I don't. Eleni's missing you? I don't know if she's missing me, Pa. I just don't think she likes me being away so long. Are you drinking? She asked me. No, my love. No, agapimo. Tempino. I lied to her. She doesn't believe me. She knows I'm with you. And that's a proof enough that you're drinking. Yes, Papa, it is. So Gary wants to leave immediately. He's filled with anxiety all of a sudden, an anxiety which I full well understand. Let's stay one more night. I just want to have a word with Olga, to know one way or another. Okay, Pa. Tonight, then, is to be our final night. Unless something's going on with Olga, in which case I'll stay on. I'm already roaring drunk by the time she comes along. Gary and I have been here a good 2 hours already, and are launched upon our 4th jug of Ritzina. I bungle the whole thing by staggering over to the stove where Olga's sitting with her mother, and throwing all caution to the wind, sit down beside her and gasp, Sagabo. She leaps up, goes over to Gary and out onto the street with him, leaving me in the full glare of her mum's outraged stare. Gary's looking somewhat sober. A worrying thing indeed, when he comes back in. He calls me over to sit back at our table. Papa, she likes you very much, but she says you mustn't dream. She's getting married soon. Well, tomorrow we'll leave for Athens. Summer's come. I've taken to sleeping rough in Athens, anywhere I happen to find myself, or fall, after the mighty tour of the taverns, under the rock of the Acropolis, on the hill of Hedges, in a doorway in Plaka. Gary's gone into an alcoholic decline, from which I can't coax him out. It's to do with Eleni, you see. But I do know where to find him, in an usury on Solona Street, to which I render myself from time to time to share a bottle with him and listen to his woe. They always play Robertica here, that wonderful Greek blues-like singing song, played on the bouzouki, which came over from Anatolia when the Greeks were expelled from Turkey, Anatolia, as it then was. And they sing of